Good morning. Thank you everyone again for joining us on one of our live social media videos. I'm delighted to say we're joined by Amy from Splat, and I'm going to ask Amy to introduce herself in a second. But before I do, anybody who's on any kind of formal social media watching this live, as always with these things, if you've got any questions or any comments, please put them in the chat box and they'll pop up in front of them. We'll try and cover as many as we can. So today we're talking about, well, skills that save lives. So what Amy does is far more important than what I do, and probably more important than most of us do. So we're going to talk about that in a minute. So Amy, just want to kind of introduce yourself quickly, and then we'll kind of go into some questions and find out a bit more about what you do, if that's okay.
Cool. Hi, thank you, Michael. Yeah, my name's Amy from Splat Training. Still trying to work out how to stay on the screen, but I've figured it out now, I think.
So do you want to tell us a bit about the work that you do, Amy, and the kind of the training, the first aid training, how you do it and that kind of thing?
Yeah, sure. So Splat Training, the main thing that we do is teach first aid training. So things like first aid at work, which is a 3-day first aid qualification for those who perceive themselves to have a higher risk in the workplace. So, for example, you might have somebody like a tree surgeon might do the 3-day, or somebody who works in manufacturing, perhaps sheet metal workers, that sort of thing, might do the higher level. And then you might have somebody working in an office environment, for example, who wants to just do a 1-day qualification that prepares them for worst case scenario and some of the more sort of normal first aid scenarios, if you like, paper cuts and whatnot. And that would just be a 1-day called emergency first aid at work. So there's 2 different courses that we offer. We also do a range of other stuff like pediatric, family first aid. We're even teaching a little bit of first aid to children online at the moment. So it's a whole range of different stuff. And Splat does a couple of other things as well. We teach outdoor skills and team building with sheep, which I'm sure you're going to ask me about later.
Funnily enough, that was on my list of things to ask you about. It was kind of a bit like an Anne Finley, you know, on the news when it was an Anne Finley story. Then that was my Anne Finley moment, was the discussion about sheep. So the last 12 months or so have obviously been difficult for everybody in all sorts of businesses. But I would imagine with what you do, it's very dependent on close contacts, being close to people. So how has it all been, and kind of where are you now with all that?
Yeah, well, it has been very interesting, both for a first aider, things have changed, and for a first aid trainer, things have changed. So there is new guidance out for first aiders. For example, if you're doing CPR, it's not recommended that you do breaths at the moment. It's recommended that you do compressions only. So a first aider needs to update themselves with current guidance. And a first aid trainer has changed huge amounts of the way that we deliver. So we're still allowed to deliver. First lockdown, when there was no delivery at all, we had to stop. But this time, lockdown 3, I think we're in, aren't we? Nobody's really sure. We've actually now got a directive from the HSE to say that we are allowed to train, but we've got to do it in a socially distanced and COVID safe manner. The thing is that what we're training is a mandatory training because it's life-saving training. So it's really, really important that we keep up to date with those life-saving skills. And if people are still turning up to work, they're expecting the same level of safety. So we must keep those qualifications up to date. There's no extension been allowed this time. In the first lockdown, people's certificates were extended. This time there isn't any. So people do need to make sure that if their certificate is due to expire, then they're coming in and getting that done. So we have bought more equipment. So there's much less sharing of equipment in a training session. We've got to have a room that's big enough for having 2 meter social distancing. It does mean we've had to put a little bit more effort into kind of the fun stuff, if you like, the games and the making it interesting, because we relied heavily on lots of scenario work and group work and getting in together and doing stuff, working on a mannequin together, and that was for me, a big part of what I love about teaching it is that it's really practical based and really working together-y. So we're not doing so much of that. It's much more sitting in your seat with your 2-meter bubble around you and making sure that that you interact with others during that situation has been a challenge. But we have got some new games and new ways of doing that. So and we're working on more all the time to make it really a fun session rather than just sitting at a table the whole time.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? The kind of obviously the changing workplace dynamic, I guess, that's happened over the last year or so, with whether it's your traditional office environment. And obviously there's a lot less people in the office, so I guess that maybe the people who were first aid trained, you might need more people who are first aid trained now, because the people who were in before pretty much every day are not in as much. And then I guess also in other environments, whether it's, I don't know, manufacturing and things like that, there is a change in where the people are. People are trying, hopefully, to spread out and things like that. So have you noticed that the kind of different requirements that have come up, not just for you in terms of what you do, but the whole workplace has changed?
Yes. Yeah, there's quite a few places that the structure is completely different. I do some work in schools. The way they are operating in schools is completely unrecognizable. You know, they've got, every corridor has got these lines down the middle, and they've got to be in lines all the time. And if a child needs to leave the classroom to go to the toilet or anything like that, they've got to be followed by a member of staff so that they don't burst anyone's bubble while they're out there and that sort of thing. So completely different. And that's meant that in the training room, people are reticent to be there in the first place. Sadly, I've had situations where I've had to kind of have a good chat with somebody before they'll come in to explain how different it's going to be and how we're not going to expect them to put their mouth to this mannequin and things like that. So it's really changed that sort of the environment. There is definitely a need for companies, organisations to recheck their first aid needs assessment. I don't know that many people have necessarily done that, so I would like to get that message out. If you've got people on furlough, are they your first aider? Are the staff that are still there covered? And there are ways around that. Like we're not saying you've got to go out and get more people trained, although I'd love you to do that. But it might be that your next door neighbours can kind of work together with you, and a first aider can cover two businesses. If that is the case, then that first aider needs to know the specific risks of both businesses as well. So it has to be a two-way conversation to make sure that people are happy to do that. The other thing to check is that if you have got a first aider in, are they still happy to be a first aider? First aid by its very nature, it often involves close contact. And if you've got a first aider who happens to be vulnerable or shielding or any of those things, then we need a new first aider, don't we? We need somebody who's going to be safe to do it. And have they got the right equipment available? Have they got gloves? Have they got masks? Are they ready and prepared to do first aid from a distance if we can? It's a strong suggestion that we should, wherever possible, not approach and not share space with a person. So if you've got somebody who's bleeding, for example, can you direct them from a distance to apply pressure to the wound and do the first aid from a distance? And those are all things that we need to sort of talk through and be prepared to do now that we've got this new situation.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing, all the different things that you have to think about, that, like you said, whether your staff's on furlough or like I said, the first aid people might, I don't know, live at home with the elderly grandparents, so don't feel comfortable. Obviously, there's so many things to think about. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. So if I said to you, Amy, oh, there's no point me being first aid trained, probably not going to need it, what would your response be to that? And I think I can guess, but I'll let you say it anyway.
Everybody should be first aid trained. Absolutely, everybody should be first aid trained, even if it's just a really short course, even if you just watch a video on how to do CPR. Excuse me. So many people get it wrong. So often what you pick up from the TV is just totally wrong. And so people make poor decisions when they're faced with the situation. So some of us go around oblivious to problems around us and never have to deal with any first aid. Others of us kind of constantly faced with it. I have a friend who's done CPR 4 times. She's not even trained, but she just has happened to have been there 4 times in her life. That could happen to any of us at any point. We could need to give CPR, for example. If you rely on what you've seen on telly, it's inevitably going to be 3 pumps on the chest, somewhere roughly on the chest. And then if they don't come back to life after 3 pumps, then give up and go home. That's not right. Please don't do it. So get proper training, even if it's just watching some decent quality training online.
I guess that's the thing about these days and things like that. I'm assuming there's so much content out there. Anyway, I'm sure you could go on YouTube and find plenty of things and other places. So there's probably no excuse for any of us, is it? Like you said, to at least not have some basic skills in that.
They're actually bringing it in at schools as well. So it's, I think it's gone ahead. It was supposed to be 2019, the end of that. They started teaching it in schools. Obviously, things are a bit wonky at the moment, but teachers are having to become okay with it so that they can then teach the children in schools. Just basic first aid skills that can save lives. So, yeah, really important that everybody has a bit of basic knowledge.
Absolutely. I kind of made a joke right at the start about how much it matters what you do, and more than most of us. But does it, I guess for you doing what you do, knowing that I guess you could make a real difference, you hope, I guess always the hope is that people never have to use the skills. That'd be ideal. But by law of averages, some people will. So does that kind of make a difference here? We all have those days where it's a bit harder to get up on a morning or to get yourself going, but knowing that what you do makes a difference, I'm assuming could, really helps and drive you on.
I totally love it. I mean, my standard line when my class finishes and everybody's leaving, saying goodbye, is, and they're saying thanks for the course. I say, I hope you never have to use it. I hope it's been the biggest waste of time you've done this year. But it's never going to be a waste of time, because having that basic knowledge in the back of your mind is reassuring. So totally love it. And there are times when we're discussing stuff and we get into discussions of finer points of things where I get really into it, and you can get quite emotional actually at the prospect. I once had a course. I was teaching a course in a building. There was a long corridor with lots of rooms down it, and somebody was walking down the corridor, and as he walked past, he realized what we were doing, and he came in, totally hijacked my lesson to tell my class that he himself had CPR. He had his life saved so he just kind of walked in and took over, told everyone all about this wonderful experience he'd had. He'd ended up in hospital for 3 months. He'd had a cardiac arrest, but his life was changed, and now he's a bit of an evangelical sort of supporter of all things CPR and first aid. So, I mean, that was a brilliant experience for the people in the class on that day.
Well, I'm about to say that kind of story is more powerful than probably anything you could say to them. That listen to that, and it makes it real, doesn't it? It's like anything else. It helps to have that kind of reality. And strange enough, the next question I was going to ask you was about, I guess, examples of where that people have done something that's when either you've trained them or just generally people have trained in first aid. It's made a difference. It saved lives, and obviously I know it does. But is there any examples that you can think of? Of?
Well, the girl that I was talking to you about earlier, who's done CPR 4 times, as well as having done CPR 4 times, she was at the scene of a road traffic accident where a man ended up losing a leg.
Wow.
And during the accident, she had a 18-month-old child in her car, which was a couple of cars up behind where the accident had happened. So she was kind of trying to look after her child in the car at the same time as running down and trying to do the first aid. She had lots of willing volunteers, but none of them any experience. So she was kind of delegating what to do, helping the chap, covering up the injury, reassuring him that, it was all going to be all right, help is on the way and all of that sort of thing, running back to help her child, make sure that he was safe in the car, delegating. Ambulance came. And then some 6 months later, she meets him in a supermarket and he's lost a leg. And She thought he probably would have, but usually you don't get to see them again. And amazingly, human beings are incredibly resilient. And he in his mind had switched this experience into, this is his words, the best thing that ever happened to me.
Interesting.
Because it had completely changed his life. I think something to do, the work he was doing and his life set up beforehand wasn't great, and this had shifted everything, and he was now looking at his life in a completely different way. So human beings are incredible, and while you could find yourself in a really horrible experience as a first aider looking after somebody in that scenario, it doesn't actually always end up being a bad outcome.
No, absolutely. And I guess what's happened in the world in the last 12 months, well, there's one thing that'll come out of this one, so that despite all the bad things and the negative things, there'll be good things and good things that have happened and good things and all that kind of, there always is. That's the nature of us. Now, I was trolling through your website earlier, and I keep seeing the phrase "learning that sticks." Now, obviously, that's very relevant to your the company name. Do you want to kind of explain what you mean by that? And I think it's it's relatively self-explanatory, but I'd like to hear it from you.
Yeah. So Splat was my nickname as a kid. It's an affectionate term for a small thing. I hope my sister still calls me Splat. So Splat. Learning that sticks just kind of followed up with that, because I'm particularly keen on making sure that learning is relevant to people. So when I'm teaching first aid, I've got a syllabus I have to follow, but I don't just sit there and regurgitate whatever thing I say. I'd get really bored of my own voice if I did that. A lot of my teaching style is about making sure that I use the people that are in the room and their experiences and their particular questions, and answer their questions in scenarios that work for their workplaces. One of my favorite things to do, for example, I work with Eureka Children's Museum. We go there when the museum is shut, and we train. They have loads and loads of their staff trained, really go above and beyond what's required. But we'll go into the museum and we'll find a place, like, where's the worst place you could deal with an accident? What would the accident be? How would you deal with it? How would you respond to it? Who's available to you at this point? So we go there, we make it, we make it work specifically for them, and that makes it stick much more. I think that's a really crucial part of what I do, is to make sure learning sticks by making sure that we make it fit.
Absolutely. We've had a few lovely comments on I think it's on the Twitter page actually. Yeah, so how important it is to take some time and learn CPR, and it just save lives. I think that's awesome. We even had this lovely comment. Pretty awesome, Amy.
Thanks very much.
This is always nice to hear. Yeah, I mean, one of the things I'm interested in, you kind of touched on it a little bit earlier about some of the stuff you do. I know you're doing on Zoom with kids as well at the moment, the Splat kids, and obviously a lot of them being homeschooled at the moment. Do you want to tell us about that? Because anything that can help parents, I can vouch for this, is welcome right now.
Yeah. So Splat Kids is run by my niece Meg, who's the other part of Splat, fairly newly on board with Splat. She's got vast amounts of experience working with young people and children, background in pajama drama and all sorts of things that get kids involved and get kids active. And she's doing that via Zoom. She's absolutely amazing at it. All of her sessions are designed around building confidence, but also have a health and safety or first aid twist to them. So she's running one right now as we speak, which has involved getting some of the young people up to deliver 5-minute sections. I think they are today doing 5-minute sections on first aid experiences that they've had. So that's kind of an hour of really interactive stuff that Meg's delivering. Each one has sort of practical stuff, crafty stuff, exercise-based stuff, but each one has this sort of health and safety or first aid sort of twist to it, so that the children are learning every session. And they run at the moment twice a week, but we are hoping to build that up a little bit more and get some more kids involved. But it's been really successful so far.
Oh, that's great to hear. I think, we kind of touched on earlier about everyone knowing CPR, I guess, first aid in general. Younger the better. It's like anything, is it? You learn it, you embed it, and it's kind of there's certain skills and things that stay there for life. Whilst obviously you have to update those skills all the time, and you have to, if the basics are are taught at a young age, then that's a great starting point.
Absolutely. As far as I'm aware, the youngest person to seek help successfully was 2 years old. Mother had collapsed, a pregnant mother had collapsed, and managed to call an ambulance and guide the ambulance to her house at 2 years old. So you're never too young. Tell your children what your address is. Tell them how to call 999. Especially now we're stuck in lockdown at home with them. They might be our only help. So get your kids involved, straight away.
Mine knows how to get onto YouTube and things like that. Probably that's if 999 was available through YouTube, we'd be laughing.
Yeah, exactly. So if they can do that, they can certainly ring 999 and get somebody. And if they know your address, then get somebody to you if you need it.
Thank you. That's great. Right, sheep. Tell us about sheep, Amy.
Okay, sheep. So my background, as well as in first aid, I've been in the great outdoors for 20 some years now, delivering climbing, canoeing, mountain leadership stuff, worked with the Duke of Edinburgh and whatnot. And within doing that, there's been a lot of team building stuff, corporate team building and team building with young people. So it's a passion of mine and an interest. I run a lot of the first aid courses from our family farm. We have a classroom on the family farm. We do school visits and things like that. One day I was watching the farm lads, trying to get the sheep into this paddock temporarily while the guy comes to scan them and make sure that they're all healthy and whatnot. And they were hilarious. They're all shouting, swearing, manhandling the sheep, all of that. And I'm thinking, that is, lads, come on, get together, make a plan, work out where everybody needs to be. There are ways to do this that could be much more efficient. So I had an idea, and this would have been about 6 years ago. And 2 years after that, I decided that Splat was in a position where I could probably start doing something a bit silly now instead of just the sensible stuff. And so started to trial it with a gang of friends, which was interesting. We trialed it with 20 people from all ages, from sort of 20-ish to my dad, who at the time was 67, I think. And the young people are like, yeah, brilliant. That's going to be a great activity for workplace people to do. And my dad was like, it was terrible. It was a mess. It was a shambles. It's like, yeah, but that's kind of the point, to watch the team be a shambles and to come back together and talk about how the team interacted and is there anything we could do to improve. And actually, my dad's experience of it was perfect, in that we were able to kind of talk about what you would do differently to make it better. And that's exactly what it's all about, really. It's not about a business learning how to herd sheep, because that's irrelevant. It's about a business having an opportunity to look at themselves and see how they behave as a team. And as well as going out into the fields and chasing some sheep around, we give you a hearty meal. So it'll be either a pie and peas or a Yorkshire burrito, which is do you know what? Have you had a Yorkshire burrito? Yeah. Yorkshire pudding wrapped round beef and delicious. And then in the afternoon, you can do, we can develop the team building around the sheep, or you can have an opportunity to have a go at dry stone walling. We've got a training wall, which is a lovely sort of mindful session where you can kind of relax in the beautiful Yorkshire countryside and have a go at it's a bit like a big jigsaw, which also has loads and loads of metaphors that you can bring across, like getting good strong foundations in place, and each layer supports the one above it and that sort of thing. And then to finish off, if you choose, we can do a tutored beer tasting. So we get you to sample some of our lovely Yorkshire, locally brewed Yorkshire ales. But that's only if you come in a minibus. If you drive in, maybe we'll let you smell it. But that's a great day out.
No, it sounds great. And obviously I know that it can't really be going on at the moment, but I'm sure it will hopefully this summer.
Yeah, it can be done socially distanced. We have run one last summer for a local college, and we did it entirely socially distanced. So it's potentially can be done. Obviously, it makes it a bit more difficult with the catering and things like that. We wouldn't be able to do that, but as a sort of taster session, it can be done. And we certainly think that as lockdown lifts and teams need to get back together, teams have been working remote for a long time. They need to see each other. Hopefully it's going to be quite successful over this summer.
Well, it's outside as well, isn't it? Which, as we know, is a lower risk thing. So as far as activities go, it's, you know, again, exactly, absolutely, sounds great. So last question for me, and if people want to find out about you, about Splat, and about sheep, where's the best places to find you?
All over the place. Splat Training website. The sheep bit is Yorkshire Team Building, so that's on yorkshire-teambuilding.co.uk. All over the social media platforms. I'm avoiding TikTok. I don't want to go there. Can't do it. But yes, we are based in Hebden Bridge, so we're run training from here, and LinkedIn, Twitter, you name it, we're on there.
Perfect. Thank you. I mean, like, if anyone for whatever reason can't find him, do please contact me or Northern Affinity, and we can point you in the right direction. So that's no problem. So just want to say thank you. I think what you do, Amy, is fantastic, and it's obviously so important. The first aid's important as well. But everything you do now is fantastic. So thank you, and thank you very much for your time today. It's been really appreciated.
Well, hopefully I'll see you up at the farm one day. The whole of Northern Affinity could come up. That'd be great fun.
It is already in my mind that I would quite like to do that, and especially when you're throwing in about the food there, that definitely attracts me.
Food and beer and gin as well, if people prefer gin, because there are Yorkshire gins.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, it could be a weekend, never mind a day.
Brilliant. Let's do it.
Thank you so much, Amy. It's been brilliant to speak to you.
You too. Cheers.